The sunlight hit the empty concrete where my toolbox used to sit. Just a perfect rectangle of clean floor, surrounded by 23 years of oil stains and dust. My name's Ray Stanton, 42 years old, been a machinist since high school graduation, used to fixing what breaks. My cane bit into the concrete as I dragged my left leg forward. The garage echoed like a tomb. You know what hits you first when you come home from 3 months of stroke rehab? The silence. No radio playing classic rock. No Duke barking at the mail truck. Just nothing. I'd expected quiet. Maybe some awkwardness with Dana. We hadn't exactly been close before my brain decided to shut down half my body. But I figured we'd work through it. Guess I figured wrong. The house felt stripped. Not just empty, stripped. Like someone had taken an inventory and decided what deserved to stay. My hospital cot sat in the living room where our couch used to be. The walls showed pale rectangles where our wedding photos once hung. I made it to the kitchen, each step a negotiation between my brain and my unsteady leg. The refrigerator hummed. That was it for noise. The sticky note waited on the counter. Yellow. Dana's handwriting in blue ink. I did what I had to. Don't call. That's when I noticed the empty leash hook by the door. No truck in the driveway, no tools in the garage. No Duke. She'd sold them all to cover expenses. That's what the neighbor Frank told me later when I asked where everything went. The bank account had $78. I sat on the cold kitchen tile and traced the faint oil mark on the floor. The spot where I used to kneel every other month, fixing her car. Transmission fluid. Always leaked a little. Did she remember that when she decided to erase me? Maybe she figured I wouldn't make it home, stroke at 42. Maybe she thought the odds weren't in my favor. The silence pressed against my eardrums. No argument. No explanation. Just a sticky note and an empty house. I didn't cry. Couldn't see the point. Instead, I thought about 23 years of marriage. 23 years of fixing her car, walking our dog, building something I thought would last. She'd checked her phone during my first week in rehab. Not my pulse. Her phone. Meals went untouched on my bedside table. No calls after the second week. The signs were there. I just hadn't wanted to see them. I pulled myself up from the kitchen floor, steadied my grip on the cane. The house felt bigger now. Emptier. Like it was holding its breath. Outside, a car door slammed, someone else's life continuing normally. I looked at that sticky note one more time. Her neat handwriting. Her decision. The words came out quiet, just loud enough for the empty rooms to hear. Do what you need to do. The silence swallowed my voice, but something in my chest, something that had nothing to do with my stroke, was just getting started. I woke to silence the next morning. No dog scratching at the door, no classic rock from the garage radio, just the refrigerator humming, a reminder of what little was left. The legal papers came Tuesday, hand delivery by some kid in a wrinkled shirt who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Dana wanted the house. Filed for divorce citing abandonment. That's rich, considering I was the one lying in a hospital bed for 3 months. Her lawyer's letter arrived before I could walk to the mailbox unassisted. Guess she figured timing was everything. I sat at the kitchen table, reading the same paragraph 3 times. My left hand still shook when I concentrated too hard. The credit cards were already closed, both checking accounts, emptied. Even our savings account that I'd built up over 15 years of overtime shifts. Gone. Here's what really got me. The photo albums were missing too. Wedding pictures. Vacation shots from Lake Erie. 23 years of memories just erased. Who takes photo albums during a medical crisis? Frank knocked around lunchtime. Old factory buddy from the plant, recently laid off himself but still checking on neighbors like people used to do. He'd brought a casserole dish and something else. Information. Saw some guy helping Dana move boxes, he said, settling into the one remaining kitchen chair. Weeks ago, while you were still in rehab. Frank's got this way of talking, quiet, steady, no drama, just facts. Big guy, beard, drove a red pickup with contractor plates. I nodded, stirring the green bean casserole he'd brought. First hot meal I'd had in days. Ray, Frank said, leaning forward, don't get mad, get methodical. That night, I went through the trash bins Dana hadn't bothered to empty. Amazing what people throw away when they think no one's watching. Pawnshop receipt, dated 2 weeks after my stroke. $350 for my entire Snap-on tool set. 20 years of collecting. Ratchets, wrenches, micrometers. Tools I'd saved for month by month. She'd sold them for grocery money. Those tools weren't about money, though. They were about being needed, about fixing things that mattered, about having a purpose. I kept digging through the mail pile, bills mostly, collection notices for medical expenses she'd apparently ignored. Then I found the life insurance statement. Policy canceled. 3 days after my stroke. Dana's signature on the cancellation form. The pieces started clicking into place like gears in a machine I'd worked on 1,000 times. This wasn't abandonment. This was planned erasure. She'd expected me to die in that hospital. The boyfriend? Just a replacement part she'd lined up in advance. What happens when the husband doesn't die on schedule? You erase him anyway. The next morning, I looked up the local disability rights office. Took 2 bus transfers to get there. My driving days were still weeks away. The woman behind the desk had kind eyes and steel in her voice. Marcia. She'd seen cases like mine before. Spouse abandons during medical crisis, she said, pulling forms from a filing cabinet. More common than you'd think. She walked me through my rights. Asset protection during disability, fraud reporting procedures, emergency protective orders. Everything Dana thought I'd never figure out. I filled out every form myself. Hand trembling, but signature steady. No lawyers, no drama. Just paper, patience, and memory. That evening, I sat in the public library, scanning court documents on their computer, learning the language of legal revenge. Frank's words echoed in my head. Don't get mad. Get methodical. My left hand still shook when I clicked the mouse, but my right hand, the one that signed the complaints, was rock steady. Funny how your body knows the difference between weakness and purpose. The librarian dimmed the lights at closing time. I gathered my papers, tucked them into a folder I'd bought with some of my remaining $78. Dana had gambled on my silence, on my death, actually. But here's the thing about us factory guys. We're good at reading blueprints. And her plan? It was right there in black and white. Time to build something of my own. I watched them load boxes into my truck from the kitchen window. Dione and her boyfriend, big guy with a beard just like Frank described. Chad had learned from the pawnshop receipt, even signed his name when he sold my tools. I raised my hand in a silent greeting as they worked. They both looked away. Guess they figured I'd stay quiet, play the part of the broken husband. That was their first mistake. Monday morning, I filed my countersuit. Theft, fraud, abandonment during medical crisis. Every legal aid tip Frank had shared, wrapped up in official documents. Marcia from the Disability Rights Office walked me through the paperwork. Systems designed to protect people like you, she said. Question is, do you trust it to work? I did, because the law remembered what they tried to sell as theirs. First move, I requested sale records for everything. The truck, the tools, even the couch. Amazing how paper trails work when you know where to look. Chad's name appeared on half the receipts. Big red flag for any judge. See, there's this thing called illegal transfer of marital assets during medical incapacity. Sounds fancy, but it's really just stealing from your spouse while they're too sick to stop you. Here's where things got interesting. I called every animal rescue within 50 miles. Asked about Duke. Old hound, microchipped. Probably surrendered about 6 weeks ago. Bingo. Third call. Oh, that sweet boy, the shelter volunteer said. We've been hoping his family would come looking. Family. That's what she called it. Filed the police report for theft before I went to claim him. Brought every document I could find. Vet records, microchip registration, photos from happier times. The shelter staff had the paperwork ready when I arrived. Dana had surrendered him as abandoned property. No ownership documentation, no medical records. Just wanted him gone. Duke remembered me, tail wagging, that same crooked grin he'd always had. Volunteers said he'd been depressed for weeks. Dana showed up 20 minutes after I signed the release forms. Pure coincidence, or maybe she'd been watching. "That's my dog," she told the shelter manager. "Ma'am," the woman replied, checking her computer screen. "This gentleman has all the legal documentation. Registration, vet records, police report number." "What do you have?" Donna had nothing, just accusations and anger. I didn't say a word, let the paperwork do the talking. That night, going through more mail, I found something that made my blood freeze. Home equity loan application, dated 3 weeks after my stroke. My signature on the bottom, except I was still learning to hold a spoon at that point. $50,000, gone. The bank investigator took one look at the signature analysis. "This is textbook forgery," he said. "We'll need to report this immediately." Turns out Chad had a history. Small-time scams, bad debts, couple of fraud charges that never quite stuck. Dana thought I wouldn't survive long enough to notice. She'd gambled on my silence and my death. But here I was, alive, and getting louder by the day. Within 2 weeks, legal aid helped me freeze every joint account. Dana's checking, savings, even her credit cards, locked, pending investigation. The call started Tuesday. Her employer had heard about the police reports. Elder abuse, they called it. Even though I wasn't elderly, the principle was the same. Caregiver abandoning vulnerable spouse during medical crisis. She lost her job Thursday. I was across the street from Chad's construction site Friday when the process server found him. Just happened to be getting coffee at the right time. Watched through the cafe window as Chad read the papers. His face went white. Coworkers gathered around, asking questions. I sipped my coffee and thought about 20 years of Snap-on tools sold for grocery money. Chad looked around the job site like he was seeing it for the last time. Maybe he was. I never raised my voice through any of it, never had to. The world was doing all the talking now. That evening, I stood in my empty garage with Duke at my side. Same spot where I'd discovered everything missing weeks ago. The silence felt different now. Heavier, maybe. But it was mine. Duke sat down next to my left leg, the weak one, and leaned against it, like he knew I needed the support. "Good boy," I whispered. The evening light slanted through the empty garage door, casting long shadows where my toolbox used to sit. Soon, I'd have tools again, and a truck, and maybe even some peace. But first, Dana and Chad had some explaining to do, to judges, investigators, and anyone else who'd listen. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was full of possibility. Dana's face flashed across Channel 6's evening news. Caregiver accused of financial exploitation. They'd used her DMV photo, the one where she's almost smiling. Frank called during the broadcast. "You seen this?" I was, along with half of Columbus, apparently. The divorce hearing came 3 weeks later. Judge Patricia Miller, 30 years on the bench, no patience for nonsense. She read through my evidence methodically. Bank records, forged signatures, medical timelines, every document I'd filed since that first day at the Disability Rights Office. "This court finds clear evidence of calculated abandonment of a vulnerable spouse," Judge Miller announced. "Assets will be restored to Mr. Stanton with penalties." Dana's lawyer tried to object, said she'd acted in financial necessity. The judge looked at him like he'd suggested the earth was flat. Selling a stroke victim's tools while he's learning to walk again isn't necessity, counselor. It's exploitation. Dana's bank accounts were seized that afternoon. The house, The remaining assets, all frozen pending full investigation. Dad's fraud charges were mounting too. Turned out the home equity scam wasn't his first rodeo. Creditors started circling like vultures. Here's what nobody tells you about public shame. It spreads faster than good news. Dana's friends stopped returning calls. Neighbors crossed the street when they saw her coming. Even her own sister wouldn't answer the phone after the news story aired. The boyfriend? Chad disappeared the same week his construction company fired him. Amazing how fast people run when the spotlight gets too hot. Dana was alone, really alone for maybe the first time in her adult life. The court's written judgment was 6 pages of legal clarity, every scheme laid out in black and white. How my recovery had been weaponized against the victim's financial security. Those were the judge's exact words. Marcia from the Disability Rights Office called me Thursday morning. "We'd like to use your case for advocacy," she said. "Show legislators the gaps in spousal protection laws." Apparently, my story was becoming something bigger than just personal revenge. Ray Stanton's perseverance forced a reckoning, Judge Miller had told the court reporter. That quote made it onto the evening news. Reckoning. I liked the sound of that. The phone call came on a Tuesday night. Dana's number on the caller ID. I let it go to voicemail. "You win," her voice said through the speaker. "Tired? Defeated. I hope you're happy." The message clicked off. I erased it without listening twice. Did she really think this was about winning? This was about justice, about consequences, about a system that actually worked when you fed it the right information. The local disability advocacy group started using my case in their presentations. Financial abuse during medical crisis, they called it. Apparently, it was more common than anyone wanted to admit. Other victims started coming forward, stories similar to mine, spouses who'd been systematically erased while fighting for their lives. Dana's confidence shattered piece by piece, not from anything I said. I still hadn't spoken to her directly, but from the silence of people who now saw her clearly. The grocery store clerk who used to chat with her about sales, the mailman who'd known her for 15 years, the neighbors who'd watched her load my truck with another man's help. They all knew now. Friday afternoon, I was fixing the front porch rail when the sheriff's car pulled up. Deputy Martinez, same guy who'd taken my theft report about Duke. Dana stood in the driveway, watching from 50 feet away. Visible, exposed, waiting for whatever came next. The deputy handed her an envelope. More court papers probably, asset seizure, maybe criminal charges. She didn't open it, just held it like it might bite her. I kept working on the porch rail, Duke lying in the shade nearby. The hammer felt good in my hands, solid, purposeful. Dana looked toward the house, toward me, for just a second. I didn't look back. The sheriff's car idled at the curb, afternoon sunlight reflecting off the windshield. Dana stood there in full view of the neighborhood, holding papers that would probably change her life forever. Not by a shout, not by an argument, just by the quiet weight of consequence settling around her like dust after an explosion. The deputy drove away. Dana walked back to her rental car. The truck was evidence now, and sat behind the wheel for a long time. I finished the porch rail and went inside. Duke followed, tail wagging. The silence was different now. Not empty, not heavy. Just clean. I stood at the edge of the property, holding Duke's old leash. He sniffed the grass, tail moving slow and steady. We didn't need the leash anymore, but I kept it anyway. The broken front step had been bothering me for months. Dana always said we couldn't afford to fix it. Too many medical bills, too many expenses. Funny how priorities change when you're spending your own money again. My hands were rough, grip still uncertain from the stroke, but strong enough. I didn't rush. Each nail was a small act of reclamation. Duke watched from the shade, chin resting on his paws. Patient, like he understood this was important. The new tools felt different than my old Snap-on set. Not better or worse, just different. Like everything else in this life, I was rebuilding piece by piece. When I finished the step, I hung the leash on the hook by the door, right where it used to be, months ago. No need to use it. Duke knew his way home now. We both did. The porch felt solid under my feet. My porch, my house, my life. I sat down and watched the sunset reflect in the kitchen window, the same window where I'd watched Dana and Chad load boxes into my truck, back when I thought I was powerless. The world I was looking at now was quiet, private, and fully mine again. How do you measure victory in a situation like this? Not in dollars recovered, though the court had been generous. Not in public vindication, though that felt good too. Maybe it's simpler than that. Maybe victory is just sitting on your own porch with your own dog, watching the sun set through windows that nobody else gets to decide about. Duke sighed. One of those long, contented exhales dogs make when they're exactly where they belong. Evenings settled around us like a comfortable blanket. No phone calls, no legal papers, no drama. Just the hush of a day ending the way it should. I thought about calling Frank, telling him how the porch step turned out. Maybe tomorrow. Tonight was for quiet. His porch light flicked on automatically. Same timer I'd installed years ago, back when I thought Dana and I would grow old together on this same spot. Some things survive, some things don't. The trick is knowing which ones matter. I stood up, brushed sawdust off my hands. Duke followed me to the door, tail still wagging. The world outside was still. Cars parked in driveways, porch lights coming on, families settling in for ordinary Tuesday evenings. I closed the door behind us and turned the deadbolt, not out of fear, just out of habit. Duke padded to his spot by the couch, the real couch I'd bought to replace the hospital cot. He turned 3 circles and lay down with another sigh. I sat in my chair and listened to the refrigerator hum, the same sound that had greeted me months ago when I'd first discovered the empty house. But the silence felt different now. Finally, it was mine.